Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello. Today we're going to go over the 3 kinds of narcissistic fathers, and we're going to go a little deeper than just grandiose versus covert, or even religious versus spiritual, etc. We're going to go more into what each kind actually looks like. And the first kind of narcissistic dad we're going to go over is the deadbeat narcissistic father. The deadbeat narcissistic father is usually pretty easy to spot, if only because he's usually pretty inconsistent and in and out of their children and their mother's life, for that matter. Often, he has some sort of big issue going on, where maybe he struggles with unemployment, maybe he struggles with having some kind of addiction, he might be abusive physically towards the mother, maybe even the children too, in some cases. But one of the things is, he won't be very consistent. Now, he might still have a golden child, and he still might have a scapegoat, and the golden child can be the son or the daughter, but often he is not spending too much quality time with the kids anyway. And amongst all of the narcissistic fathers, emotional unavailability, that's going to be a common theme amongst them all. But a lot of times they have something else going on that is more important to them than their wife and their kids. And in these cases, they just spend a lot of time gone. And depending on how they are with their children when they're there, the kids may either be glad the father's not around because things get much more stressful and chaotic when he is there, or he might feel bad about his absences and he might try to spoil the kids and be the fun dad when he does spend time there, and try to make the mother appear like the bad guy because she has to be the one that lays down the law. Often in these dynamics, the mother's the one who's holding the whole ship together. The dad is just holding on by a thread, and it's really just because of the mom that things get done and accomplished. And the dad, he has other priorities that are more important to him. And if there's going to be a breakup of sorts, or they finally end up getting divorced, then all of a sudden, the narcissistic father will act like the kids are the most important thing in the world in that case. And he'll try to file for custody, maybe even. He'll weaponize the kids, use them as pawns. And he's the kind of person that also might make accusations to Child Protective Services about the mother that are completely untrue and unfounded. But regardless, this is certainly the most chaotic of circumstances with narcissistic fathers, a lot of times because there might be drugs and alcohol involved, maybe some sort of gambling issue, or lots of affairs, and overall, it's just really chaotic and a lot of ups and downs. And depending on how he is with the kids, they might be glad that he's not there, or they like him around because he spoils them in the rare times that he is around. But that is generally how it goes with the narcissistic deadbeat father. The second kind we're going to talk about is the super successful narcissistic father. This is the father that is at the top of their industry, whatever they do. They might be really wealthy and really well off, and they might do a lot of traveling for work. And again, this version will also be emotionally unavailable. He's married to his work. He's married to his career. Often he'll have some sort of trophy wife that may also be a little bit emotionally distant as well. But in these cases, the daughter or the son, both can be the golden child as well, just like both can be the scapegoat. Now, the effects of this with the super successful father are a little more pronounced. With a golden child daughter, the daughter is daddy's little princess. She's the one that can do no wrong. I always think of how Tony Soprano treated Meadow Soprano in The Sopranos, where she's just a little princess, and she's going to get a Mercedes-Benz on her 17th birthday, or a Lexus, or a BMW. And a lot of this, for the narcissistic successful father, is going to be about image. Image is so important to them, and he might be emotionally unavailable, but he wants to appear like the father that has it all together when he is around. Now, if the daughter is the scapegoat, it's a little bit different. Usually in those cases, the narcissistic successful father wanted a son, or has a son there that is the golden child, and the daughter, She might speak up a little too much for his liking, might disagree with him too much. She doesn't offer him perfect mirroring in that case, and the narcissistic father is resentful of her in that case. The golden child daughter, she wouldn't do that. She wants to please the narcissistic father because she likes all the gifts and being spoiled, even though deep down she might crave a deeper relationship with him, but she'll settle for all of the gifts, etc. Now, if the son is the golden child, the successful narcissistic father, he might be really hard on that son because he wants him to follow in his footsteps. He wants him to be really hardworking, focused on his image, and be the best at whatever he does as well. But the price is, it's a very hardworking and stressful environment, and he's really hard on them, and he's really critical on them. But he also wants to build them up at the same time. Now, when the successful narcissistic father has a scapegoat son, usually what happens in that case is just like Tony Soprano and AJ Soprano, where he'll see in the kid parts of himself that he really doesn't like. So Tony Soprano would think that AJ appeared lazy, and he hates laziness, and he would really get annoyed at his son, except he would take it out on the bouncer at the Bada Bing, instead of taking it out on AJ. But in these cases, usually the scapegoat son doesn't have the qualities that the successful narcissistic father really admires and respects, and he'll be annoyed and resentful at his son in those cases, and he'll be belittling, be critical. Why can't you be like this person? Why can't you be more like that person? Why can't you be more like your brother? Why can't you be more like your sister? More hardworking, in better shape? Fill in the blank. But with whatever the scapegoat son does, it's not good enough. In the golden child, it can still appear that way too when it's the son, but it's for a different reason. It's because he wants him to do better for his own image and to follow in his footsteps in regards to legacy as well. In these cases, the narcissistic father might be having affairs. He might be doing whatever he wants when he's out and about. And the mother, she's kind of running the ship. She's like a real housewife of fill in the blank. And she's maybe outsourced some of the care of the kids too. Especially as they get older, they'll probably have some sort of nanny or something, and then a cleaner. And she kind of lives life on the high life, so to speak, kind of like Carmela Soprano would a lot of times. But she also probably has some of her own issues, but they have a deal with each other where it kind of appears like it works. And this is the thing also. When money is involved, it appears like a lot of issues just get smoothed over. And you don't really see too many kids get taken from really successful kids' houses. CPS, Child Protective Services, they don't really get called on those cases. They get called mostly on the poorer cases. There can always be exceptions, but for the most part, it's the poor people that have that issue, often because it just looks worse. Like when a poor person struggling with addiction, it looks worse than when the rich person who's in a Maserati is doing it. It's just the appearance, and the appearance can go a far way. The last kind of narcissistic father we're going to talk about is kind of a combination of the deadbeat and the successful one. It's the blue-collar, middle-class narcissistic father. He can have elements of the deadbeat narcissistic father, just probably not as bad. But he may binge drink a little bit. He might have a little bit of a gambling issue. He might cheat occasionally if he can, for sure. He might be physically abusive, but more than likely he's probably more emotionally abusive and is critical, belittling, and does all of the things that other narcissistic fathers would do. And there's more stress in this environment as well because he's actually there and they're trying to hold things together and pay bills, but they're not super successful. And the narcissistic father in this case, he might be a little bit resentful that he's not as successful as some people. And then in other cases with it, he will then try to live through his kids instead. Now, narcissistic parents, they see their children as extensions of themselves. Either way, whether it's the deadbeat, the really successful one, or the in-between one, like this. And either way, though, they can also have golden children. They can also have scapegoats and the black sheep. But it just all depends. It can be elements of either between the sons and the daughters. But when he's trying to live through his kids, that puts another added layer of pressure because he's not doing it in his own life. And if it's the golden child daughter, he might really be pushing her to do things that he never did himself. Or she can also be the princess to the extent that he can. And he won't be too hard on her. And with the golden child son, he might be really hard on him. Especially I see with the sports dads, the ones that maybe were a high school or college athlete, and they didn't make it much further than that, but they want their son to be super into it, or their daughter even to be super into it. And these are some of the people that you see that go to a kid's sporting event, and they're out of control. They're out of control with how they act, and they're super hard on the kids, super hard on the refs, super hard on the parents of the other kids' team, and it's just a complete fiasco. But it's because they're living through them. They're trying to get their needs met through their children. And this is what, in particular, the moderate case, not quite successful, not quite the deadbeat, that's what they're doing. They're doing parenting. They have kids to get their own needs met, more than likely. With the super successful narcissistic father, he doesn't need to do that as much because he's really successful in his own life. But he will still do it to an extent. And he still will want the image of appearing like the great dad, whether it's to a son or a daughter. And one of the frustrating things that can happen in all of the scenarios is when they're out in public, he won't want to belittle and demean them usually out in public. He'll want to act like he's the best dad in the world, talk up his kids, but then behind closed doors, then he'll rip them a new one. And even if it's, say, a golden child daughter, he might criticize if it's a scapegoat daughter, he might criticize what she wears and say it's too provocative. But then when they're out in public, he'll say, oh, what a pretty young woman my daughter is turning into, and act like it's a great thing. But behind closed doors, he'll be really ridiculous with it and really belittling and critical. When it's the son, he might be belittling towards him, say he's lazy behind closed doors, be very critical of him. But out in public, oh, he's doing so great, he's doing so this. But then behind closed doors, it's a different story again. But when the moderately successful narcissistic father is living through the kids, it adds a whole other layer of pressure. Not to mention, there's financial pressure here too, just like there is in the deadbeat case as well, even more pronounced. But the difference is, the narcissistic father in the deadbeat scenario, he's so out to lunch that he hardly even feels the pressure. And he's doing his addiction or out and about gallivanting and whatever else he cares about. And it doesn't feel as wild and as super stressful and tense as the moderate ones. There's a freedom in kind of giving up the way sometimes the narcissistic deadbeat dad can. But the moderately successful one, they don't do that. They're trying to hold it together, and they're very controlling with it, and they're very tense with their energy, which creates that sensation of walking on eggshells. All of the narcissistic fathers can be controlling. If there's one thing that they have in common, it's controlling, plus emotionally unavailable. And there's going to be some coercion in there too, usually towards the mother though. And with the moderately successful one, like I said, he might be cheating, and he might be emotionally abusive towards the wife, might even be physically abusive towards the wife. It really all depends. Or he'll shift between love bombing and devaluing with her, just like he'll shift with love bombing and devaluing amongst the kids, even if they're the scapegoat, even if it's the golden child. It can still cycle a little bit. There's just going to be one that they usually favor a little more than the other. And there's going to be one that they take their frustrations out on a little more than the other. If it's an only child, they can get a little bit of both. And again, though, with all of these cases, it depends. There can be nuance, there can be shades of gray, there can be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's never going to be across the board, this is always how it is. There's going to be some shades of gray. But for the most part, you're going to see these three categories. And within these three categories, the moderately successful father can be a little bit more like the deadbeat. He might be striving to be a little bit more like the successful one, but bits and pieces of all of them can be true. To go over them all again, though, you have the narcissistic deadbeat father. He's the one that's very inconsistent. He might be good for a little bit, then he's out to lunch. He might not care too much about the kids, and then all of a sudden act like he really does care about the kids if there's a divorce or a pending breakup. He might even try to file for custody, and he'll try to weaponize the kids, use them as pawns, make false allegations, make divorce court or custody court a nightmare. That's what you'll see a lot with the deadbeat. With the really successful father, he's not around as much. He'll often try to buy the kids' affection or spoil them in a lot of cases, but not always. Sometimes he'll be hard-nosed with them too. He'll probably have affairs. He'll be very emotionally unavailable. He'll be controlling. He'll be belittling. He'll be critical. But he'll also mix in that spoiling element too, especially of his golden child daughter. And with the golden child's son, he might really try to build him up, but he'll also be hard on him too, because he wants him to follow in his footsteps. And those kinds of divorces can sometimes get pretty messy too, because the successful narcissistic father, they don't like not getting what they want. They like being able to pull the strings and be in control, and if the mother decides to try to get out or try to get some sort of settlement, he will probably throw a hissy fit and really be like put his foot on the ground and try to be really upset about it. And it might not go too well for anybody, but that can sometimes get messy too. And in the third case, the moderately successful fathers, they can be a little bit of both. If they might have a little bit of a binge drinking problem, they might just have a little bit of an anger problem, they might have a little bit of a gambling issue, they might be a little adulterous at times, but they will also be emotionally unavailable, they will be controlling, and he'll do the cycles, he'll do the love bombing and the devaluing with his wife or his girlfriend and the kids, and he'll also have a golden child, he can also have a scapegoat. If it's an only child, they can get both in some cases. But either way, it can be very tense energy with the moderately successful one because he's trying to hold all the strings together, and it can get stressful, and he'll be walking on eggshells. And in some cases, the mother in that case can be even more successful than him, which he might also resent too. But between the two of them, they get by, but he doesn't like it if she outshines him, the mother, in any way. He won't like that one bit. He'll feel like that is a threat to him. And any narcissistic dude is not going to like it when the woman does better than him. He's going to want to dim her shine because it does threaten him, and he will feel like it makes him feel less than, and it hurts his impact and his ability to control her as well. But those are the three parts here of the narcissistic father. I will do more videos, more in depth about the golden child and the scapegoat and that dynamic, and how to handle being the golden child, how to handle being the scapegoat, and how to move forward through those things. But if you got this far, please remember to like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share this video with others that you think might benefit, maybe someone that has a narcissistic father or is dealing with this scenario in one way or another, or maybe it's the woman, the mother of a narcissistic father's kids. Maybe she'll be able to relate to this as well. And comment below your thoughts. Maybe you have a unique experience or perspective that you think would really help if you shared. And I think we would all be happy to hear it too. But with that, thank you very much for watching and have a great rest of your day.